Good morning, everyone. Um, a couple of weeks ago, we started a new series on the hindrances, the mental qualities that hinder us on our spiritual journey. Um, so we started with desire, and then last week we did anger, but I only got halfway through the lesson. So we're going to carry on with the hindrance of anger today. Um, and to help us to figure out antidotes to anger, we're using the Buddhist teaching that's found in the Middle Length Sayings, number 25 ways to let go of thoughts. So the first method is to change your focus from the unwholesome mental quality of anger to something that is wholesome. And I mentioned last week that the most effective thing that I've found in my own life has been using the peace treaty. Um, that wholesome focus has been very, very effective at calming down the anger. And then I find it's then easy to switch to other wholesome things like loving kindness, compassion, equanimity. So that's the first method that we try is to switch your focus. Then the second method, if the first one doesn't work, is to look at the danger or the drawbacks of being angry. And last week we started looking at the peace treaty that was developed by Thich Nhat Hanh, um, as a way to um, avoid these dangers. Because if we're in a relationship and we are beaking off with our anger, we can really destroy relationships or, cause a lot of problems. And so Thich Nhat Hanh has this beautiful peace treaty that he devised for couples, but I feel it can also be used for other family members and for friends. Um, and then for people that you don't actually sign the peace treaty with, you can at least keep the principles in mind and do it one-sidedly yourself by following the principles of it. So I'm just going to screen share um, the peace treaty and continue talking about it. So there's two parts to the peace treaty. The first part addresses the person that's had their buttons pushed, who's got triggered and is feeling angry. So that's the part that we went over last week. And if you missed it, it's on our YouTube channel, or if you go to our website under resources, videos of the weekly talks, so you can catch up there. And then the second part is the person who has done or said something that's triggered the other one. So that's what we're going to look at today. And you can find this peace treaty on our website. If you go to teachings and then in the drop down menu, the second item, basic teachings, and it's lesson 3. But you have to go to the bottom of the sort of like the summary, and then there'll be a little phrase that says download the entire PDF of the lesson, and that's where you'll find the peace treaty if you want to review it. Okay, so this is the part that's referring to the one who said or done something that's triggered the other person into anger. So the first thing it says, I, the one who has made the other angry, agree to, and I've got has made in brackets because nobody makes us angry. This is something that we bring up ourselves. So that's why I have that in quotation marks. 1, respect the other person's feelings. Don't ridicule him or allow him or her, and allow enough time for him or her to calm down. So you don't want the situation where you're having an argument or disagreement and one person like runs out of the room And you don't want to like run after them and be banging on the door saying, come out and talk. Let them leave, and take time to calm down. Because remember, when we get triggered, we go into tunnel vision and we're just seeing, I'm a perfect person, I'm in the right, you're a horrible person, you're in the wrong. And you can't see the humanness of both of you because you're in this tunnel vision. But when you calm down, then you can open up and see, oops, I'm actually a human being too, and I've done things that have made the other person angry, or, and they're a lovely person, and, most of the time we get along and everything is good. But, you know, anyway, we're both human, but that's not when you're in tunnel vision. So you really need this time to calm down. And it is good to get out of the energy field of each other, because if you stay in the energy field, then it can tend to keep it going. So number two is basically the same thing. Don't press for an immediate discussion. Wait for them to calm down. And number three, confirm the other person's request for a meeting and assure them that you'll be there. So when the other person's calmed and says, okay, I want to talk to you about such and such, can we meet at such and such a time? Then you agree to that or suggest another time. And then, this is the important part, practice breathing and taking refuge in the island of myself to see how, A, I have the seeds of unkindness, of anger, as well as the habit energy to make the other person unhappy. Because um, if our partner or friend or whatever is upset, sometimes we're in our little tunnel vision and we don't want to believe that we've done anything wrong or that we've triggered the other person. And so the first thing we have to do is accept the fact that, oh my gosh, yes, I can sometimes be unskillful and say and do things that, hurt my partner or hurt my family member or my friend. So important to have that self-realization. And then B, to realize I have sought relief from my own suffering by making the other person suffer. And I put, if this was the case, because sometimes when your partner or friend is triggered, you really haven't done anything. They've just made an assumption. They've heard a tone of voice or, seen a facial expression, which may have had nothing to do with them, but they make an assumption and then they get triggered. So, but other times we are unskillful and we do say or do things that hurt the other person. Um, and so if we have done that, but then realize our unskillful action was because we were somehow trying to protect ourselves or take care of ourselves, but unfortunately we did it in an unskillful way. C, by making this other person suffer, I make myself suffer. And then 5, apologize as soon as I realize my unskillfulness and lack of mindfulness without making any attempt to justify myself or waiting until the meeting. And this is so important. If we say, I'm sorry I said or did something, and then we give an explanation, it's like we give the apology and then we take it right back. So it's really important to say, I'm sorry, and then zip. Later on, when you're having your meeting, then you can talk about what the circumstances were. But when you, at the moment of making the apology, it's this, I'm sorry, and then zip. Leave it at that. And then this is actually a treaty that you sign for one another. So it says we vow to abide by these articles and to practice wholeheartedly. And then you sign it. So of course, you're going to sign this peace treaty when both of you are in a good place, feeling good, and it's anticipation of times when you might get triggered. Okay, so that's the peace treaty. So that's part of step 2 in the Buddhist teachings in the Middle Length Sayings, number 20. So number 1, change your focus from what's unskillful to what's skillful, what's wholesome. And number 2, the second method is see the danger or the drawbacks in expressing your anger. And then number 3, I think, is just to forget. Yeah. So just try not to, if somebody has said or done something, just try and distract yourself. Like, don't bring it to mind, because it's just going to be fueling distress within you. So just try and forget about, don't think about the person, don't bring them to mind. Now, when Ajahn Sona teaches about the hindrances, he said from time to time, maybe after a week or a month or a year or a decade, if it's something really bad, you can try and bring the person to mind and see, do you have more equanimity? Do you have more calmness? Can you sort of do something to work this through? Yeah, so bring it to mind, from time to time, but not initially. If the first 2 methods haven't worked, then just try distracting yourself so you can just forget about it at the moment. And then number 4 is stepping down. Like, if you're really angry and you really want to do something that's violent or whatever, and the first several methods haven't worked for you, can you somehow do something that's less dangerous? And I have an example of this from many decades ago. When I was working in Calgary, I was on call and got called to emergency to see this very angry young man. He was probably in his 30s. And they had put him in a private room in the emergency room. And so I went in. So there was just the 2 of us in this room, and he had been, I guess, pacing back and forth because he was so wrought up. So I'm standing there trying to, get his story about what happened. And he was just so angry that he punched, and like he punched the wall millimeters beside my head. So he was doing a step down, like he wanted to punch somebody out, and I was somebody that happened to be there. But he didn't smash me in the face. He got the wall. He made a pretty good dent in that wall. But so now it would be better if our step downs could be a neutral, a neutral activity, like running around the block or running up and down the stairs or doing push-ups, skipping rope, like something that's neutral. Because as I mentioned to you last week about the punching bag that was in the psychiatry unit, and how the research has shown that if you punch a punching bag, you actually can most times increase your anger. So anyway, if you can do something neutral to step it down, all the better. And then finally, number 5 is the clenching thing, where you clench your teeth together, you push your lips together, you push your tongue up onto the roof of your mouth. And so this is going to be important if bad words are going to want to come out of your mouth and you don't think you can stop them, and then just clench down and try and get out of the energy field of where you're at. So, I mean, this is the last method because it's not good, because it's creating a lot of tension in your body. But if you're going to really cause a lot of damage by things that come out of your mouth, then definitely temporarily do that until you can get away from the situation that's triggering you. Okay, so that's the Buddha's sort of generalized teaching for all kinds of thoughts. So we applied it today to anger, but it can, the middle length sayings, number 20, 5 ways to let go of thoughts, can be applied to all kinds of things. But the Buddha also had some specific teachings on how to deal with anger. So one of those is found in the Anguttara Nikaya, chapter 5, number 161, and it's called Removing Resentment. And very interesting, most of what he says in this sutta totally matches what he said in the middle length sayings, number 20. So the first thing was to bring up loving kindness or to compassion or equanimity. So it's that focus from the unskillful to the skillful. And then the next method in this teaching was forget, like don't distract yourself. Try not to bring to mind the person or situation that's triggered you. The new teaching in this one is about karma. You don't have to worry about taking care of, justice being done, because karma is going to take care of that. And I'll screen share again the chant that we started with. And I chose this chant because it talks about that. Here it is. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. So karma, and this is the Pali term, the Sanskrit, a lot of people are more familiar with the Sanskrit term, which is karma, like with an R. So our karma are our intentional actions. So we can intentionally do things that are wholesome, or we can intentionally do things that are unwholesome. And then from karma, we have outcomes, and that's called vipaka. That's the Pali term for it. And so the basic theory about karma is do good, get good, do bad, get bad. So the reality that the Buddha saw, was that when we do good things, that either immediately or sometime later in this lifetime, or maybe many lifetimes from now, good things are going to come back to us because of that. And the opposite is if we're doing things that are unskillful or unwholesome, that either immediately or a little later or future lifetimes, then things are going to come back to us. Now, hopefully, when you think about this, you're not rubbing your hands in glee that the person's going to get it in the neck. Hopefully we can conjure up the emotion of compassion for them. Like if you see somebody doing, saying or doing something that's really unskillful, we're all products of our causes and conditions, our experiences in life. And so this person hasn't had the opportunity to really learn skillful ways to deal with their anger. And that's going to cause them problems. And so hopefully as we mature in our spiritual path, that we can bring up compassion for this person. Okay, and then the next teaching is actually by one of the Buddha's chief disciples, Sariputta. So it's in the very next teaching, so the Anguttara Nikaya, chapter 5, number 162. And in this teaching, Sariputta gives similes for how we can deal with people who are triggering anger in us. And the first simile refers to a person whose behavior is not skillful, it's not wholesome, but their speech is good. Um, and he said, this is like finding a rag on the road. Now, in the time of the Buddha, cloth was very precious, and the monastics made their robes out of rags. And so if they found a rag, then, a rag would usually be raggedy, right? It would have raggedy edges or thin parts or something. And so they were supposed to just, tear off the parts that weren't good and then keep the small part that was good and collect these and sew them together for their robes. So the simile is to see this person who has unskillful behavior but good speech to, tear off the rag, don't pay attention to the behavior. That's sort of the raggedy part of the cloth, but pay attention to their speech, which is good. And then we have the opposite, where a person has a bad mouth, but their behavior's lovely. They have very good behavior. They just happen to have the habit energy of a bad mouth. So he said the simile for this is like coming to a pond and you're thirsty, but that pond is covered with algae. So that's going to be the bad speech. And what you do is you just push away the algae, and then you can sip some clean water. So again, it's focusing on the behavior, not focusing on the speech. And then you have people who their speech is bad, their behavior is bad, but every once in a while they'll have an openness of their heart. And so that's what you want to focus on. And the simile is that just occasional openness of heart is like walking in the desert and you're thirsty, and there's a little bit of rain has collected in the hoof print, like the impression of a hoof print of an ox or something. Now, there's just a little bit there, so you can't take your hand and scoop it or you'll just stir up the mud. So you have to get down on your hands and knees and just with your lips very carefully sip this little bit of water that's in this hoof print. So he's saying that's the attitude to take towards somebody who doesn't have good behavior, doesn't have good speech, but from time to time they have this openness of the heart. And then you've got people who bad speech, bad behavior, their heart never opens. And he said to look at these people as if they're a traveler, like a sick traveler, somebody who's sick, and they're a long ways from the next village and a long ways from the previous village, so there's no help for them. And so it's just to conjure up compassion for this person, because it's as if they're sick. And then if you don't have mudita, being happy for the happiness of others, then there may be people who have beautiful speech, beautiful behavior, their hearts open, and maybe you feel resentment or envy or something. So the Buddha is saying, no, 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 no. You want to see them like they were a clear, cool pond that you can go in and bathe in or drink from. So you want to focus on their beautiful qualities. Then the last sutta I have for you is still in the Anguttara Nikaya, chapter 10, number 80. And we're back to the Buddha now. And this is 10 ways to subdue hatred. So first of all, he talks about someone who's felt they've had harm done to them by another. And this could have happened in the past. It could be happening right in this moment, or you may be worried that it's going to happen in the future. And for all of these conditions the Buddha is saying, just say to yourself, well, what did I expect? Like, did I expect everybody in the world to be a perfect human being, to be perfectly, have all the perfect conditions so that they can always act in a skillful, wholesome way? So if you've been harmed past, in the present, or worried about it in the future, just say to yourself, well, what did I expect? There's many people who didn't, have the conditions in their life to teach them how to be skillful. The second condition is if you're seeing that someone has harmed someone that you care about, either in the past or it's happening right now, or you're worried it's going to happen in the future. And then it's the same thing. What did I expect? And then the next condition again is if you're having trouble with compassion. And this is if you see, if you have somebody that you don't particularly like or you have a difficult relationship with, and this other person's giving a kindness to this person that you dislike, either in the past, currently, or you're worried, you're thinking that they might do that. And then again, just say to yourself, well, what did I expect? That everybody I don't get along with or like, nobody's going to get along with her. Whatever. And just the whole thing is just to realize that holding that anger is of no benefit. It's the second arrow, right? The first arrow is the harm that's being done. And then the second arrow is the one you pick up and stab yourself with it, which is fussing about it, feeling angry about it. Because who's it hurting? It's hurting you. It's making you feel badly. And then the final comment is for helping us to let go of anger is to have our Kalyanamitas, our spiritual friends, and hopefully a spiritual friend who's maybe a little more advanced than us, so they can role model to us how to deal with anger. Then that's extremely supportive. Okay, so that was all I had to say. Let me just, oops, there we go.